Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Louis D'Souza and Amy Blackford. Today is Monday, August the 17th, 2020. It is 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy, and we're off to a really good start today. The week, of course, starts on our Monday shows, and as Joel Elston likes to point out, Joel says Monday is the best day of the week. I can't disagree with him. I've got two great people to talk with. So I got to ask you guys, Amy, Louis, do you think that Monday is the best day of the week?
No.
I like all the days of the week, actually.
Yes. Go, Amy.
Is that a good answer? Do I get an A plus?
You get an A plus for that. that was my answer.
Well, that makes that really simple. So how are you guys? I mean, you guys look like you're doing great.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I've had the challenge. I was telling Louis that I got to listen to his podcast when I wasn't on a few Mondays ago about his instantaneous healing. And I think it's a really relevant topic for many people who experience any sort of pain, illness. For me, it's been, it's a story that I'm telling, and that's why I call it a thought form. And I've come to the understanding that as long as I keep telling the story, it's going to continue happening. So anyway, I got these through gym injuries, and it's been something that's been getting progressively worse. But the last year, it's been particularly challenging for me. So I've come to the understanding that by focusing on it, talking about it, thinking about it, is obviously through law of attraction just going to create more of it. Pain is one of those things for me, has been one of the highest challenges I've had to meet because it's so hard not to pay attention to it, not to give it my focus. So I've understood it's finding perspectives that work for me in order to get this going in the right direction. So something that really struck me about what Louis said was I came to this week, I'm going to have to actually embrace and thank the pain for being there, for the contrast, so that without this, I wouldn't understand what it was like to be in a healthy body. So this experience, I have to actually be thankful for it. But it brings me to something that really struck me that you said, Louis, on the podcast, was that change in vibration from distraction to that sigh of relief that you had when you raised your vibration, to the harmony that you felt, that in between, and understanding that relief could have come quicker if you combined the distraction with the visualization. So that's something I'm really going to start working with. So I think it just really resonated with me that it's just another tool for me, because through focusing on my therapies, the stretching, all of the different things that I'm doing, I'm still focused on the problem. And that's why it's not shifting faster.
Yeah, that's great, Amy. I'm glad you came to that.
Yes.
The other thing that it could be telling you, of course, is a little more simple and down to earth. It's maybe the gym is not for you, you know?
Maybe the what?
The gym is not for you.
Oh, okay. So it's very interesting that you say that, because one of the first perspectives that I came to was acknowledging that the original injuries did come from I was over exercising and I was dieting in an effort to conform, as many women do in our society, to look a certain way. And basically through this negative programming, I was doing very extreme dieting, very extreme exercise.
What are you talking about? Amy the Barbie doll?
So now the exercise I do is very natural and it's actually more therapeutic. So you're correct. That is how this started.
That's an interesting thing that you're talking about there. This whole idea of how society dictates things and we pay attention to what society says. I mean, I like Louis said, I mean, I'm not somebody who likes the gym. I tried doing a gym just because I needed to do something about a year and a half ago. We were dealing with so much stress. I just had to get rid of the stress, and ended up taking a gym membership for a year that I used for a month. And I just didn't like it. I have never enjoyed gyms. I like getting outside. I
had my first gym membership at 14, and it was just something that I did. And I did actually, or I thought I enjoyed it, now I enjoy natural exercise, whether it's bike riding, walk.
Yeah.
I love walking, but I don't want to be on a treadmill. I would rather be out in nature taking a walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the way I feel about it. And
I've got a very expensive gym membership, and I love the sauna and jacuzzi.
No, there you go.
that's where he meets most of the people that he's telling about law of attraction to. So of course he likes it.
I love it.
But I also like the swimming pool. I love the pool.
Oh, I love to swim. So at the lake, the week prior for my best friend's birthday is when I was floating in the lake, and I hadn't been in the water all summer, and it was very therapeutic. The sun, the water, and I was under the water enough, you're floating on your back. It was like I was in a deprivation tank, and I literally just had that moment where I realized the pain that I was in was completely gone. I was pain free. And the idea that it's just a thought form, it's something that I can shift. It's not solid. And so it's all trying to find all these different perspectives. But what's been catching me this week is that with all of this knowledge, I'm still focusing on the problem. And that's where listening to the podcast, it reminded me I've got to not focus on that, find the distraction, whatever that is, and then visualize I'm whole already as I am. And then the saying affirmations are wonderful.
There's a funny little, I don't know what to call it. It's sort of a parallel, I guess, that goes on here, because you were just talking about how you need to distract yourself. It's so difficult to distract yourself from pain. Pain is so hard to take your mind off of. And there's a little mental exercise that I think about. I think of it as going to my mental gym. Whenever I'm dealing with pain, it's like an opportunity that I take upon to say to myself, I am not going to look at the pain. I'm not going to feel the pain. I'm going to feel something else. It's kind of like exercising the muscle of deciding where my focus is going to be.
I love the way that you just phrased that, because that's exactly one of the perspectives I came to when this challenge was presented to me. And as it was progressing, I saw it as, instead of feeling victimized by it, I almost saw it as a rite of passage that I had evolved enough that this was a big challenge, and it was going to be just that like you're saying, that strengthening of the mental and emotional muscle, really challenging. How much do I understand the law of attraction? How much can I put it into practice? And it's really expanding my idea of that.
And I think it really comes down to one simple thing. What will you focus on? I mean, it's so simple. It's complex.
Right. It's a choice. No matter what it is,
it is a
choice.
Which is the hardest thing to remember when we're in the midst of pain. But even in the midst of pain, it's a choice.
Yes.
Well, to me, that's empowering. I don't know about other people, but for me, realizing I have the choice, I can either choose to focus on and feel the pain, or I can choose something else. That at least gives me a way. I may not have succeeded just yet. I may still be feeling that pain and focusing on that pain, even though I don't want to. But at least now I know I got a chance. Now I have a way.
I've also come to understand through embracing contrast that none of it's wrong. So instead of me trying to escape pain and do all of this, instead
so
look
powerful
at it. Yes, I love it. It is that understanding that no matter what's happening, it's all supposed to be happening. It's all for my best. It's all just, that's why I like to call them challenges instead of problems, because they're just new points of contrast, new points of learning to expand. And
expansion points is the word that I like using.
What do you call them?
Expansion points.
Expansion points. I love that.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Well, today seems to be a day, or this past week seems to be a time for challenges. You talk about how that you treat these as challenges. I issued a challenge to our listeners last Thursday about Dan Mangina's Money Game book. And I am going through the 15-step process, and I challenge listeners to do that. And I've gotten a half a dozen or so who have said, yes, I'm going to take the challenge up. So I'm looking forward to tell Daniel about that. But challenges can be really, really cool.
They're fun.
They can be fun. It depends on how you decide to look at them.
Right.
Yeah, every subject, two subjects. Yeah.
That's right. But if you're willing to approach it from the side of this is going to be an adventure, then challenges can be really, really good. And that's my segue
Speaking
to
of challenges, Louie, said you were
Okay.
going to have one for me and Walt today.
Yeah. But before we do that, I wanted to go back to the healing
Absolutely.
section.
Okay.
And I don't think, Amy, you've heard my epiphanies yet when it comes to health. So when I was young, I'd say 18, I had my first massive epiphany when it come to, I was a very sick kid most of my youth. Had asthma and got every flu and sickness going, and I really struggled with my health. They pumped me with antibiotics. I'm now allergic to tier 1 antibiotics, blah, blah, blah. But my first epiphany to health came when I realized that the simple truth that you are what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied herbs and medicines, and, I spent a lot of time in health food shops chatting up girls. No, looking at all the minerals and vitamins. And studying them and getting a lot of information and all the rest of it. And started being very careful about what proteins and minerals and vitamins and stuff I put in my body, and when and how, and salt and all the rest of it. So, I really found that this was very, very important for me. And I even went on a raw food thing, and my energy levels went through the roof, so much so that I had to start eating the rubbish again to
I
bring
did
it
that
down.
too, actually.
And, there was a lot of information I learned revolving around protein, carbs, just the simple basics of nutrition, and when to eat them, how to eat them, etc. So all of that was fascinating. And to me, it was a truth. Then somebody said to me, what is very important as well. So I went and studied liquid, what liquids to have, when to have them, etc. So that was my second epiphany, was, you are what you drink,
Okay.
what liquids you take in. And then I studied water, and I studied the water-salt relationship, which is absolutely fascinating and incredibly important. And, so the body's 70% water, and the vegetables and fruit and all the other food that you eat has got water in it. So, water was the big epiphany to me, the second one. So then I started integrating the nutrition and then the water. And then I had another epiphany, which blew the other two out of the ballpark completely, which was, you are what you breathe.
Wow.
And that was a huge one. And then I studied all the yoga breathings and breath and the pranayama, et cetera, and I went into all that stuff in great detail, and a couple of Bhattacharya Bastrika, which are my favorite yoga breaths, etc. And, that was amazing to me. And then I used to say to people that came up to me and say, you are what you eat. I said, no, rubbish, you are what you breathe. They said, what do you mean? And then I would say to them, okay, so how long can you last without nutrition, food? And they say, 7 days or whatever. I said, okay,
Right.
how long can you last without water? And then I'll say, a day or so. And then I'll say, how long can you last without breathing? And they'll say to me, okay, just like a couple of minutes or so. And I'll say, right, okay, so which one is the most important? Which one do you do most often? And then they would say breathing. So I said, I'll make a statement to you. If you breathe and drink correctly, you can pretty much eat what you want.
Oh, I love that.
So this was the kind of scenario I was playing with at that time, to get people to understand how important breath was, because breath is infinitely important. And I've learned another key to that today, and I'll bring it up when I finish my epiphanies. Not today, I learned it a couple of days ago, but I want to bring it in because to me this is amazing. It's extremely simple. So you may not think it's particularly profound, but for me, it's ultimately profound because it's the next step in my puzzle that I'm solving. So the next epiphany was, can you guess what the next epiphany was?
Well, I can guess, but I already know, so I'll let Amy guess.
We've got breathing.
So we've gone
Emotion,
nutrition.
thought.
No, we got, well, okay, all right. Yeah, okay.
Our thought and emotion.
I was going to break down. So we've gone nutrition, we've gone liquid, we've gone breathing, and then you brought in thought. And it is thought. You are what you think.
Right.
You are what you think, which
yes, absolutely
includes vibration. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Abraham Hicks, of course, brought in the idea that you are what you think. And then if you think about it, you think about nutrition. If you think about it, you think about liquids. If you think about it, you think about breathing.
Yes.
Okay. And all of it is controlled ultimately by your thought. So, now I would say something like, you are what you think, and it was a whole progression of epiphanies. Now, if you work on all of them at a similar time, so you focus on your breathing while your daily routine is eating good food and liquids at the right time, the right amount of salt, and you are thinking more about what you want, less about what you don't want. You're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was very, very profound for me. Each one of these was an epiphany.
Yeah.
And each one of them took years and years and years to sort through and understand. Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Ask the question.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying all of this because I did get this book with these meditations. It's called The Gabriel Method, John Gabriel. And it addresses changing the way that you think, reprogramming the mind, whether it's for pain, weight loss, it's to get the harmonics of the body working properly. And basically, like you're saying, what you think is what you are. You will naturally be drawn to the proper way to breathe, the proper exercise, natural exercise that feels good for your body, the proper foods, the proper things to drink. Everything does start with the mind. As we know, this is all that this reality actually is thought. So it makes perfect sense that we are what we think about. So I think it's brilliant that you had this kind of sequence of epiphanies. And I've just got this book with these visualizations up like 10 days ago. So it really syncs up with exactly what you're saying here.
So cool. Hey.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that I learned, the extra part that I was going to bring up just now about breathing was this. Now, we understand from the Abraham Hicks teaching and from my own experience and from it's now my understanding of how it is there's source energy in each one of us. So we have the power that creates worlds in each one of us. Now, if we go from the progression of food, liquid, breathing, and then we want to tap into the source. Now, all of this is the mind's using it all, so it's all combined. Then I learned this other key aspect this week, and it's really simple. It's that when you breathe in, you are tapping into that power that creates worlds inside you.
Yes, that makes sense.
When you breathe in, that is the link to the non-physical. So if you think about it, the food is gross and heavy vibrationally because it's more material.
Right.
When you get liquid, it's less materially.
Right.
If you get to breathing, it's less materially.
Right.
Okay. Almost not there at all. Can't be seen. Can't be touched. And then you get the last aspect, which is source energy, which is the all of non-physicalness, which is can't be touched, or I go and say I got a soul and all these kind of things. You can you can try and believe it, but you can't prove anybody else that you've got a soul or anybody else.
So the breath is you actually taking in this source energy.
So when you're breathing in, that's your connection to source.
Wow, I really love that perspective. That definitely resonates for me.
It's a very simple thing. It's nothing that may seem very profound, but for me, it's another link in the chain of progression.
To me, the simple things are the most profound.
Profound, absolutely. Yes. And if somebody hadn't told me that, I don't know if I would ever put it together myself. It's so simple.
It is.
It's just like Abraham Hicks' teachings,
Yes.
So simple. How did I not see it?
I have noticed when I do my different stretching and therapies, when I direct my thought and the breathing with it, it is so much more powerful, and I get so much more of a release in a positive way than on the days that I'm distracted. Maybe I'm holding my breath, because until you really become aware of your breathing, a lot of the time you're not breathing, you're holding your breath, you're tense. And so becoming more aware of that is definitely important to the mechanics of the body and the flow of the thought.
As you release the chest area in your breathing, you will find that your voice will deepen. Really go deeper, man.
Really go deep.
Go Arnold.
How low can you go? But there was an interesting aspect they brought up with this breath, and that is that if you consciously focus on the aspect when you are breathing in, you are tapping into source energy. That conscious awareness that you are tapping into source energy when you're breathing in is incredibly powerful.
So I have to ask a question, because it's kind of out of balance right now. What's the breathing out part?
I'll have to read it to you, but I didn't get into it. I was so excited about the breathing in part. and they did say something, but it wasn't 100% clear to me, and that's why I'm glad you asked the question, Walt, because maybe by next week I will have that part of it.
I want to take a shot at just guessing.
Yeah.
To me, if breathing in is taking in source energy, the breath
so you're getting
out,
the clean water is release and relief. You know, that's the kind of thing I
right.
got.
I would
but
think
it's not quite what they were saying, which is why I was hesitant to say that. You know, that was exactly my take on it. So, you know, we're bang on the same there.
Yeah, breathing in is the source energy, if that's, you know,
yeah, taking in the pure, clean air, basically.
And then breathing it
breathing
out would
the
be
dirty air. Yeah,
yes, the release of whatever's stored up in the body.
Release. Yeah.
That would be my best guess.
But the way they worded it, it didn't quite fit. So I wanted to go back and read it and go through that again. So yeah, that was all I wanted to share.
Great information. I think it's really such a fascinating topic, self-healing, because we're always looking to doctors for answers, and really it's all within us. And for me, this has been, any of my close friends know that are listening and that have been there for me. It's not something that I talk to about with a lot of people, because like I said, the more you talk about it, the more focus you're putting on it. But it is something that's
depends. If you're talking about your solutions and how you're changing, not a problem.
I am mostly focused on talking about the solutions. It's very rare, other than my husband, when he can just notice it and he tells me, hey, listen, it's okay. And he gives me the space, but I don't dwell. And that's the other thing, is I shift very quickly. So this has been a huge challenge for me. And it's something that really has my attention and my focus. And it's something I'm very engaged with learning more about, to share it with other people, because I think it's a really important topic. So I really loved that podcast and found a lot of wonderful nuggets that were syncing up with what I had already learned or what I was already thinking, and then added to the own dialogue and understanding that I have on this topic.
That is just so great. And you know that singer who the vocal coach who crits other singers. You remember the one you watched?
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
she was amazing. Now,
yes.
What I learned from her largely was, first of all, she's obviously got so much knowledge that she's hearing that she's actually not able to get into words.
Yeah.
You know, she's just got a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I've watched other people analyze the same piece of music, and they haven't come anywhere close to her understanding and level of clarity and everything and the way she portrays it. So I was like blown away by listening to 3 or 4 different people crit the same person and her level of clarity. But beyond that, it gave me a different sense of listening. So, you know, when I'm listening to Amy now, I'm listening a little clearer, and I'm trying to put some animation on my face like she does. You know, it's really difficult for me because it's not my norm at all. Okay. when you watch her, you can really see how she's hiding nothing. She's
Yes.
expressing exactly who and what she is at that time.
Yeah, and that's what you found so fascinating. I'm sure I was fascinated as well.
Yeah. And that level of openness is not something you see quite often, especially the Asian population, and even the English very much so as well. It's just like this closed face and don't show your emotions and poker face and all the rest of it. And she was doing completely the opposite, and I found it so refreshing. Maybe Walt, you can put up the link for that if anybody's interested in her, because I really want to promote this lady, because I think, well, she's extremely popular. I think I watched a live one of hers the other day, and I think by the end of that live production, she had 1,400 views.
I was not prepared for the voice that came out of her. So I first was watching her critiques, and then I told you I want to actually listen to her sing. I was not prepared for the massive voice that came out of her. It was really magical.
This is a great setup, because Louis walked us through his steps of learning that start off with you are what you eat, then you are what you drink, then you are what you breathe, and then finally you are what you think. And I'd like to take it one step further. I agree completely that thought is the origin of everything. But I think there's also another component here that's really helpful to bring in, and that is we live in the physical world.
Yes.
And in the physical world, we are what we feel.
Yes.
And in fact, feeling is the way that we choose to respond to what we experience and to what we see and what we like and what we don't like. And it's all about feeling. And it's actually two different kinds of feeling. There's the emotional feeling, and then there's also the physical feeling. We have two kinds of feeling that go on, and they both play a very important role. But what they ultimately end up doing is they end up defining who we are in this physical world, in what we often call the ego form of us, as opposed to the source energy form of us. That's who we become in this world, is what we feel.
Right.
I would pose the idea that feeling is not necessarily where the origin of it all is, but is perhaps the easiest way and the simplest way to define what we are.
Well, to me, it begins with a thought, and then the emotion is the response, the energy and motion that is generated from that thought. But you are correct. The emotion is what has that electromagnetic pull. It's the thing that is the attractor. So, but it originates from the thought, which is so fascinating. So they're really one and the same. They're so interlinked. You almost can't.
Yeah, you can't separate them really. They are.
It's exactly how I would agree with it. I would say, Walt, you're completely correct. What I should have said is, you are what you think. And let me explain what that is. That is a process of what you think affects how you feel, and how you feel affects how you think. And there's a cyclic aspect to that. And that is very, very important. The reason I didn't bring it in was I like to try to keep it really simple, but to be more accurate, you really need to say it in more depth like that. I often said with those memes, when people put the short ones out there, I really get angry with them because they're not complete. They don't say everything that they're supposed to say, and they don't finish, Yep. And I want to tear them to pieces. I have this great desire to tear them to pieces. And what you've just done is exactly what I do to memes. So I applaud you.
It's a great
point. To tear you to pieces. I was just trying to build it up, actually.
I know. I'm just kidding you. And that clarity is very well worthwhile. But it took me a long time to work out that it was a cyclic thing, that it was going from thought to feeling, and how you feel affects how you think, and how you think affects how you feel. And so it goes around in circles. Okay. And until I got that, I actually still agreed with the people that said there's heart people and there's mind people. That's absolutely can't be true.
Right.
Haven't you heard that before? Oh, they're really a heart person. They're so full of heart.
Yes.
And, he's really a mental person, And, and you get that. And if you take the thought of a mental person, they'll be thinking more analytical thoughts. And if you think of a heart person, they'll be thinking more heart thoughts. It's not necessary. And both of them are thinking,
Right.
So you can't really separate that. So at one stage you can say, I understand why society says it. It makes sense in that context. So I don't really have a problem with it, but it started to make sense that it falls apart when you start analyzing it in the way it actually works.
Well, plus it's also fun to make fun of the way that we categorize things. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to make the joke that there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who divide the world
categorize and those who don't.
And those who don't. Yeah, it's like, it's making fun of the fact that we like to categorize things. We like to put labels on things.
Label, compartmentalize. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we love to do that. And it's useful and it has its role to play. But ultimately, is that who we really are? I don't think it's who we really are. I think it's what we do, but it's not who we really are necessarily.
So that's why you get a lot of these processes out there. The 10-step processes and the law of attraction. There are 10. Okay, there's 100 different types of amounts of laws there are to the physical universe. It's a law of love, and there's a law of this, and there's a law of attraction, and there's a law of that. And everybody's got a different amount of laws, and they all explain them differently. But ultimately, they're all the law of attraction expressed in different shapes and forms. Yeah. Except maybe the emotion. I don't quite know how you'd fit that in. That could maybe be a separate one, but I don't think that's any of their laws in any case. They don't say the law of emotion. I don't think I've seen that anyway.
Have either of you read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle?
A New Earth? No, not that one. No.
Okay. So just speaking about being in the present moment and the labeling, basically just to summarize the book, Eckhart Tolle was a psychiatrist. And he had reached the peak of his career and he was still miserable and he actually contemplated suicide. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, he questioned, who is thinking this thought? Mm-hmm. He suddenly had this realization that my thought is actually not me. It's not my eternal me. And this kind of sent him on this quest. And this book is quite amazing the way he breaks it down, that we have this, he calls it an entity, the pain body, and it's all of your memories that are stored within you. So somebody says they got triggered and they just become like a different person. That's their pain body taking over. And his cure for this, he calls it basically a mental illness that humans suffer from, is from all of the labeling and the compartmentalizing that we do, that we aren't actually in the present moment. We are either living the past, which we cannot change. We're projecting a future that may or may not actually happen. And so we're not right here, right now. And it causes this form of a fracturing of the human spirit. The book is actually quite hard to read. I had to read it 3 separate times.
No kidding. Have you ever tried to listen to him read his own books? Oh, my gosh. You start contemplating suicide.
That is a very funny joke, and I'm down with that. You're dead on with that one, Louie. But I will say just the teaching of the labeling, we just kind of demolish the essence or the spirit of something with the labels a lot of times. So it's learning when to do it and when not to.
It's interesting how some of these larger than life teachers, the ones that are better known, have given us both ends of the spectrum. You just described how Tolle, who went through depths of depression, basically gave us the focus on the now. Another example that comes to mind is Martin Seligman, who's a leading figure in the positive psychology movement. Okay. And he was actually one of the instrumental leaders who got the whole thing going after he wrote a book called Helplessness, which if that doesn't kill you, nothing will. I mean, it's the most suicidal book you'll ever read.
It is interesting seeing the same topic coming from so many different backgrounds. Like The 4 Agreements is one of my favorite books by Don Miguel Ruiz, because that is very simplistic. And that's coming from the Toltec teaching of the same thing, being in the present moment and, following these 4 agreements, which when you really try to apply them, like, don't take it personal. That one is life transforming. When you find yourself in conflict or someone is treating you some way and you start reacting, don't take it personal. It has nothing to do with you.
That becomes easier and easier, I promise you.
It really does. I've been practicing it for quite some time, and I've got to say I've gotten to a level with it now. It's very liberating.
It's very liberating, yes.
Yes.
Abrams says one of the biggest challenges us humans have is It's being worried about what somebody else thinks.
Yes. We control.
Wow, boy, is that a theme I was seeing on Facebook today? I mean, literally, like all of the posts on Facebook were about how can I change somebody else's mind?
Yeah.
Every single one of them. I mean, it was crazy.
There's a theme.
No kidding. I thought that's what we were going to talk about today. I didn't realize it was going to be something we talk about 3/4 of the way through the show, but
So many people still believe that their joy, their happiness is being infiltrated by somebody out there, something out there. And it doesn't even need to be a person, whether it's COVID, what's going on in our government. I mean, you can fill in the blank.
Amy, when you get one of these guys, you know what you say to them? You say, there's no assertion in an attraction-based universe. And they go, huh?
Yeah, right. What are you talking about?
Huh?
Yeah, sometimes you kind of get that evil eye.
They stop and they start thinking about that.
Gear strip.
Yeah.
And, it takes a while. It really takes a while to get into that gear of understanding that, because it is a truth. All three of us understand that, but it's not the norm out there.
You've got to take ownership. Whatever is happening is really.
So nobody has ever done anything to me ever without my permission? Nobody ever?
Yeah, that's a pretty radical concept.
How does that work?
I like radical.
Have you ever read the book Radical Forgiveness?
I have not read it, but I have heard about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that on my list.
Yeah. I haven't read it, but I've had people discuss it to me in details, and I was just in full agreement.
One thing I've come to learn about forgiveness is it's not saying if someone has hurt me in a way, I can honor that pain. It doesn't mean that I'm excusing whatever behavior, whatever happened from them. It means I'm releasing myself from the suffering of thinking about it over and over and over again. And that's another big one.
And you can release them too, Amy.
Absolutely.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You have our permission.
I do that.
Cindy Chavez has a great term for it. The word radical made me think of it. She calls it radical responsibility. The idea that I attracted everything. It's all me. That's pretty radical. It's about as radical as it gets.
Yeah, when I first went through my awakening, that was part of the process for me. When I really started having those communications with my higher self, was first facing that everything in my life, and I made a list of all the things I was complaining about or unhappy with, I had created, whether consciously or unconsciously. I forgave myself for that. And I started with the easiest thing that I could tackle at the top of the list. I told myself, as I learn this, I'm going to check each thing off. And of course, there's another list now. But it was so amazing to me. Once I took that ownership, I always go back to that now, no matter what's happening. When you can take that level of ownership, it gives you all the power. And that is what this whole entire topic of the law of attraction is about, is learning how much power you actually have.
So do you know what the naysayers say about us who become detached like this, who don't care what other people think? They think we're uncaring, unfeeling, non-human type people. And it's a common attack for a law of attraction person who's starting off, etc. So what was interesting for me was to break it down and to see what was actually going on there. Yes, you don't care so much about what the person's doing or saying, but you are now seeing their source, their soul.
Yes.
And you're recognizing the equalness of that amongst us all. And that is, when you do that, when you see the other person's source and you focus on it, because that's a high vibration, yours is a high vibration, everything starts raising together. That is of more value and of more care, and the best way to care for other people than caring about the animals are being killed and these people are doing this and the virus and you're not wearing your mask. You name
Instead of you getting involved in whatever drama, fill in the blank.
If you can look for the source in them.
Exactly.
You can see that common denominator between us all.
And that is a very loving thing to do.
That is divine love, and that's not love.
There's a difference?
There's no difference, Walt.
That's a wonderful point that you make, because you can be present, and it's not that you're not compassionate about whatever drama or challenge is, but by you lowering your frequency and engaging on that level, you're not helping them, and you're certainly not helping yourself. And so by maintaining a higher frequency, you allow that person to actually join you in that if they choose to.
You also allow them to play their own game without any judgment, as long or as much or as little as they want.
Right.
You give them that freedom, and that is often, even though they may not like you not getting down in the dirt with them, they'll respect that. There is a level of respect that intuitively comes out to those individuals who hold their ground and hold their moral high ground, which is the old way of looking at it, which I don't like those words or anything.
Right.
But that's what we often used to say. If you keep the moral high ground, it's a good idea.
I've also noticed over the years, by applying this, I don't really have a lot of people in my life anymore. I don't know if Walt and Louie, you share this, that are coming to me with their drudgerous problems. We have very high vibe conversations. We can talk about things that are going on, that there is contrast, but it's coming more from a solution mindset, a hopeful mindset. And so I'm not even really surrounded by, I have to say, I have my intimate circle of friends, my family members. We're all kind of in this really high vibration conversation most of the time. And that's pretty wonderful.
And how does that work? Why is that happening to you?
Because that's where I'm at. And
exactly.
So it's just, that's what I'm attracting to.
So when you are vibrating at a certain frequency, the appropriate people at that frequency are going to get drawn to you. Therefore, the friends that you used to have drop away, and the new friends appear.
Absolutely.
And it becomes a transformational thing. Now, some people can't let go of the old friends, so they go play in the dirt again. And then they don't feel very comfortable with doing that anymore, and it becomes very confusing for them, and they want to drag the friends up with them, and it becomes a tug of war. And that's when you start realizing that you actually don't have to do anything. If you keep your positive vibration, they will automatically fall away, and the others will automatically come.
Yeah, I have a great analogy for this one, because I've explained it to people that do have a hard time letting go. Mm-hmm. This is a friend I've had since childhood, but we're not syncing up. And I always say, you are the, protagonist, you're center stage of the play of your own life. You always have that spot. And all of the other actors that are on the stage with you, the secondary characters, are going to change. Sometimes they're going to be in the background, sometimes in the foreground, playing the lead with you. Mm-hmm. And if you would just allow them to rotate as they serve you and are matching where you are at.
Love it.
Your play is going to be amazing. But it's when you're trying to force somebody who's supposed to be backstage doing the lighting to be the lead with you in that moment that you're going to run into a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. And I love that analogy, because
I'm going to use that.
It's so much easier for me to allow the different characters. And sometimes somebody goes backstage and then they come back 7 years later and they're playing a key role again, just at the perfect time. And it's really magical. And then it also allows me, when there is this transition with friendships, I don't get so worked up about it anymore, because I don't look at anything as absolute. I'm looking at it as, are you a match with where I am right now? And that's all it is.
Are you a match? Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it can be answered a number of different ways.
It can.
One way is yes, you're a match. Another way is no, you're not at all a match. A third way, and this is probably where most of it happens, is you're somewhat of a match.
Right.
To some degree, and that's where we find ourselves most often.
Maybe you're there to provide me with contrast, and that's why I'm keeping you
could be.
At this, in this.
But that is a perfect match, in my mind.
Yes.
That you don't necessarily want to call a match. because we're not going to sleep together.
Right.
Not with that match. That match, I don't want to.
So there's some matches that I want to stay away from, like the ones that are about to light gasoline fires. I try to avoid those because I tend to get burned when I'm too close to those.
Yeah, trying to avoid them is a good way of drawing them to you. Well done.
Burn. No pun intended.
Yes, burn.
I guess it depends on how you define avoid. For me, avoiding means I just stop paying attention to them. But you can look at it the way you want to. That's up to you.
No. You redefine the word avoid and you win. But if you keep on using the word avoid, as far as English dictionary goes, you're burnt.
I know what you're saying.
I'm glad that you think that way for yourself. For me, that's not the way I look at it. I mean,
Walt,
you can hang on yourself all you want to, but it's not going to work with me. Sorry.
Basically,
Good,
what you're saying is you take when you see when you're noticing the way you're feeling around a certain person, you'll just take your focus off of them.
Yeah. And that's the point I'm leading up to is that, I mean, there are times when I lower my vibration because I came here to experience the contrast.
Absolutely.
And so in the act of lowering that vibration, that's where I am what I feel, I think really comes to the fore, because now it becomes a question of how am I feeling about this? Am I feeling about it in a way that's okay? Yeah. All right. Well, then I'll stay here for a bit.
Do you know how enjoyable it is?
Well, maybe I might want to reevaluate a little bit.
Do you know how enjoyable it is to be angry now and again? Really?
Oh, yeah.
It's great fun.
I call it the Mad Italian. She comes out in traffic in Atlanta. I go from spiritual to New York Italian.
Which I would call it spiritual.
Yeah, I call her the Mad Italian, and it is an emotion I embrace. And, I try to embrace, honestly, all of them. They all serve me in some way.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the real question is always, what does your reaction and your response feel like to you? Is it the response and feeling that you choose, that you chose deliberately, that you wanted to choose, or did it get chosen for you and you kind of fell into it? Which one was it?
I think I get to the point where any emotion, even the high moments, I don't want to say I get bored, but if I sustain one thing for too long, I just want to flip it around. And so if I find I'm just on that high flying disc, as Abraham calls it, I will throw a wrench in there on purpose just to knock myself out, to remember how good it felt to be back there. Because once I adjust to that feeling, it loses its excitement.
Yeah, because contrast is where it's at. But one thing I would like to point out is you do know that you can go from that amazing high-flying disc to a higher one. And then you can have contrast between those two.
That's true.
Absolutely.
There's no rule that says a contrast has to be below a certain frequency.
Yep.
I will say
man has made that negative and positive line.
That is one thing I have.
It's completely as imaginary. You can have that line whenever you wanted to. Yeah.
I have noticed as I've been on this journey that what used to be what you would call the expansion point, the lower part of the spectrum, is a lot higher than it used to be. So my varying degrees, what used to be what I would call my rock bottom of emotion, is much higher than what it was, 5 years ago. So
you're not going from depression to revenge anymore.
No,
you're now going from rage to anger.
Right.
Or shall we go higher for you, Amy? I think we're going from detachment to hope, or expectation, or hope to expectation. Yeah, so you start to realize that you are slowly going up that vibrational, emotional vibrational scale, which is lovely until Abram pointed that out with clarity. It was again something brand new to me. I was so thankful for that information.
Yes.
That vibrational scale, it was actually a little bit confusing to me at first until I realized I didn't have to label all the different emotions, talking about categorizing before. When I realized all I had to do is figure out, does it feel better or does it feel worse? And that was the only criteria I had to work with. There were no other requirements.
That's where simplicity is the best.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't necessarily satisfy the rule that Louis was laying out that you have to be more explanatory, but it does help day to day, moment to moment, in terms of just how you're going to deal with stuff. Well,
right.
Do I feel better about it? Do I feel worse about it? Now it's real simple. I don't have to think about it all that much, I can actually reserve my thinking for the stuff I want to think about instead of thinking about all this other stuff that's going on out there that I can't keep up with all.
There's a rule about rules, hey?
There's a rule about rules.
Broken. Rules are there to be broken. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I can't think of a rule. There's a law that I can think of that you can't really break, but other than that, there are no rules that I can think of that are unbreakable. They're all breakable. Josephine
asked a question, and I really would like to answer it.
I was going to bring it up too, but I couldn't figure out where it fit in, so you just grab it and go with it.
Rumi. I don't know how much you know about Rumi, Josephine. Rumi. Shams Tabriz was his teacher. So he was a Persian poet, okay, and he didn't actually write anything. One of his dudes sitting at his feet thought the words coming out of his mouth were so amazing that he better start writing them all down. And it's like prose and poetry and all the stuff written together, and it's amazing.
You obviously never read Richard Bach. I mean. Sorry, that's really a distraction.
I know. but Rumi was an incredible individual. So what happened was Shams would come to visit Rumi, and they would send all the students away, and everybody would have to vanish. And the two of them sat in a room together for days on end, and they would be like so tripping out on spiritual highs. At least that's kind of what was gathered. And then they would kind of, Shams would leave again. And it was just fascinating, the whole story about Rumi and his life and what he wrote. It's very poetic and beautiful and down to earth, some of it. Sure. You really have to read Rumi. It's very difficult to explain him, but I love him. Just to answer your question very quickly and shortly, Rumi is amazing, and he comes from, in my mind, with Shams, who was an incredible individual, very, very highly spiritual perspective and place and writing and et cetera, et cetera. Of course, it's translated into English. There's a little bit lost there, but yeah, still very, very well done. Certain translations, I can even recommend a certain translation if somebody's interested. But yeah, got a lot of time for Rumi. Hope that answers the question.
That was pretty cool because you went on quite a bit there, really waxing poetic about him, but I still don't know anything about him. Cool.
I can go through my book and start reading it to you, but beyond that, it was just the sense I got about the relationship mostly between Rumi and Shams that I can't really put into words. It's just such a spiritual connection, which really defies a lot of words. There was such a close bond between those two, and it comes across in the way certain people have described it. And it's probably about 20 years since I read Rumi. So,
well, what you're describing is very, very similar to my own experience early on doing this podcast, talking with people like Joel Elston in the early years and so forth, about how I was going to relate to the topic and what I would think about it and how I would ask certain kinds of questions, and I was trying to understand how to apply it in my life and so on and so forth. And as those conversations took place, I realized pretty early on that I lacked what I would call positive vocabulary. There was plenty of negative vocabulary. Yes. There were so many words, so many concepts, so thoroughly thought out about what we didn't like. But when it came to describing what we liked, there were a lot fewer words. And I made it a kind of a semi-conscious thing here on the podcast over the last few years, especially, to try to bring in, okay, here's what I think positively about X. Here's what I think positively about right. Right? Yeah, about Y. Got my variables screwed up. How can I turn my whole thinking process around? And in the process of doing that, learning that the words are actually there. What was missing was the way to sync them up into sentences, into concepts, into ideas. Well, and I think probably the same thing most likely. Now, I have not read Rumi, so I can't really speak, but my guess is that Rumi is much the same thing. You have to actually take the time to work through how am I going to express this particular exchange that happened between teacher and student in the affirmative. It takes practice to do that.
And some of this that we're speaking about is beyond words. Language can be quite limiting. As we're here communicating with each other, we're doing the best that we can. But language, words itself, it's kind of a process of an energy that defies even that. So
that's the same thing that Abraham says and that the Stream of David has said. They both have said very much the same kind of thing, that there aren't words, there aren't concepts to describe these things. And I keep thinking to myself, you know what, that's a bit of a cop-out. And I'm not blaming them in any way. Don't get me wrong. Right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's kind of a cop-out for us. We just haven't taken the time to develop the new ways of expressing them.
Right.
We just need to learn to do that.
Yeah, the more you practice, and I think that's what part of this podcast is for you all, why you're so passionate about it and you love doing it every day. It is your way of tapping in and talking and giving a language to this energy, the law of attraction, all that's encompassing that. And it's giving you the vocabulary to speak about it more and more. And that's something that you're clearly passionate about. And I love being
it's so much fun to have that vocabulary. And it becomes additive over time. In fact, it actually becomes multiplicative. It starts to increase geometrically as you keep playing with it over and over again.
Well, and like you said, we are taught from birth to actually think the negative is going to happen.
Oh, God, yes.
That's how we learn how to speak. And so this is a complete reversal of that.
Yeah, that library is this big.
It's deep.
So, have you ever heard of Sanskrit?
Yes.
Heard of it? So, the little I know, the basic concept is there are words and concepts and ideas in there that are not in the English language and cannot be explained by English.
Right.
But it's a very spiritual language. So what I'm thinking is that for us to be able to define these other worlds and vibration frequencies and experiences, we're really going to have to come up with new words.
Well, sure. That's part of creating the positive vocabulary. It does include creating new words. Yeah. And in fact, that's actually a tendency I see going on in the broader society. Not that there's a whole lot of positive words being created, but a lot of words are being created.
Yes.
The words are being created out of thin air at a rate far greater than 40, 50 years ago. Far greater. I mean, just playing with memes and with, acronyms and all that alone has exploded. But coming up with, one of the first ones that came along was ginormous.
Yeah.
And I remember that one coming along, I said to myself, that's two different words. Come on. But I realized what they were trying to do.
The two work very well together, yeah.
They do work together. And people were trying to find a way to create a new way of expressing how fabulous it felt, how wonderful it felt. I said,
that's a great comparison.
Yeah. So that's basically how it happens. And it is happening on the global scale. Well, it can also happen here, and it does happen here.
That's right.
We have found new ways. I mean, the quickest one that comes to my mind right now, Cindy Chavez and I did a lot of shows about the books of Neville Goddard. And one of the very earliest concepts we created was the Neville decoder ring. The Neville decoder ring is our way of explaining the fact that Neville has a whole series of metaphors to equate his biblical verses that he likes to draw upon to this play that he talks about that humans play out within the context of those biblical verses. So you have to have your decoder ring to decode that when he talks about God, he's talking about consciousness. And when he talks about Jesus, he's talking about awareness. And if you can draw all those metaphors, you get Neville.
Right.
Now, Louis would say, why would you even bother with that? Because Abraham is so much simpler, and I agree with him. But there's still some value to the exercise because it does help to create new words.
I like seeing how many different teachers have so many different languages and are all saying the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
That fascinates me.
Well, when you are, which all of them are kind of doing, striving to be, do, understand, conceptualize source, you are heading in the same direction. You don't have any choice but to bump into each other.
Much.
It's absolutely
It's a good
impossible.
way to look at it. I like that.
It's impossible. And it's interesting because some people go down, they get the source and they come down and they create this whole process. And it's completely different to the other processes, but it still takes you to the same place. And then this guy comes with these processes and they're all starting to head to a similar place. So, I've come to appreciate everybody now. It's like all of them are well, I don't know. You could see some are really hitting you out of the vibrational alignment, but again, it could be hitting somebody in a vibrational alignment. Just depends where you're aligned. So, it's all relative as well, and
they're all adding to the dialogue.
It's really interesting how Christianity was important for me at one stage, and it was useful and helpful, and then reborn Christianity was useful and helpful, and then the occult, which I studied for a while, was useful and helpful.
Right.
And, so it can go on. And spiritual paths that I followed have been useful and helpful. It just depends where you are vibrationally as to what your next step is and what's going to be useful to you. And you will draw, the universal law of attraction will draw the appropriate teacher, place, information to you. So I'm always
100%.
excited about what's my next step, what's coming next, because it's really, really exciting.
That excitement is really what drives this whole program, and I'm appreciative of the fact that you guys helped drive it along. I mean, since this particular combination, Amy, when you came on the show, this particular combination came together, the excitement levels just went about 20.
Yeah, I'm really loving this. It's a great way to start off a Monday, that's for sure.
It's very interesting, Walt. I have two other friends. One's an English friend and one's a Norwegian friend. And when the three of us together, there is a significant different dynamic that kicks in.
Right.
That is so powerful. And it's only happened once before. And now with the three of us now, it's for the second time in my life that I've experienced that. Just because the three come together, the vibrational level goes up. And I've never quite experienced it with two, but it's a significant thing. I don't know. There's a thing in Christianity, they say when three and more, when three and more get together in my name.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but there's something about the third person sometimes very, very powerful and important. Yeah.
I think it has to do with what Lynn McTaggart called the power of 8. I mean, it doesn't matter what number you pick. The point is, the more focuses, the more points of attention that you add, and to the degree that those points of focus or points of attention are congruent with each other, they reinforce each other.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
there's that resonance that kicks in, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you guys for resonating. I want to remind people there are other ways to resonate, including to resonate every day by downloading the LOA Today app. So make sure you do that if you haven't done it. And if you have done it, please share it with others so that they can resonate as well, because we want the resonance to go on and on and on. So thank you guys very much. Looking forward to the conversation again next week. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.